Benedict XVI, rest in peace. Hope he's watching down on this podcast right now. He wrote a book in Italian called What is Christianity that was released very recently, this past week. And so recently that people haven't really even been able to interpret it, I guess. And the book has some bombshells in it, man. I mean, he went out swinging on this one. So I'm going to bring up some of the things the book talks about. And we haven't even gotten really a full breakdown yet, which I think is totally the fault of mainstream media. I mean, if this was anyone else, this would be everywhere, all over the place. I mean, he's a former pope. So Benedict XVI in the book speaks of homosexuality and the fact that there are gay clubs in seminaries. So yeah, hear a lot of talk about the homosexual clubs, talk about there being very like open secret boyfriends, sexual deviancy out in the open in a lot of these seminaries, and just the fact that some of these people had wives and children, in some cases by their girlfriends. I mean, just crazy. I mean, that was what we've gotten so far, but I mean, it's crazy to me a few things. Like, okay, this bombshell drops, obviously critical of like the current pope and the current state of the church, and yet why do we not have it published in English and like have this everywhere?
It'll come in English
even if it was in Latin,
a week or so.
Right, but okay, but say if Pope Francis retires and he says or passes away and he says anything critical of, say, like, I don't know, the TLM or whatever, like this would truly be everywhere by now, would it not? I mean, is that crazy of a?
Yeah, I mean, so like the Catholic left isn't going to want to publish this because it's calling attention to stuff that they would like to sweep under the rug. And then you have another problem with conservative, Catholic media, which oftentimes is a little risk averse. They don't want to really mention bad things about
that's an understatement.
They don't want to mention bad things about the church because they want people to be happy about their church. They want people to love their church and the church's teachings. But if you do love the church and her teachings, then you should be frustrated and upset when someone is causing great scandal. The answer is not to just kind of ignore it and hope no one notices it. That's not helpful at all.
Right.
So, I mean, Pope Benedict had a great legacy when he was Pope of trying to reform the seminaries. He understood this to be a big problem. He had done a lot of great work on that. And now it's just amazing to see some of this other stuff where he's just like, yeah, dude, this is a massive problem.
And Erica, you were talking about how he had so much hatred against him from the German church.
Right. I mean, I think for me and a couple of our other colleagues, like you were talking about, just our conversations that we have in the office, the chilling line was that, he wrote that he didn't want to publish. And after the misunderstanding, there was a book published on the priesthood by Cardinal Robert Serra, one of our absolute dear friends in Rome, Cardinal Serra. And Pope Benedict was supposedly mistakenly put on the cover. He didn't actually write very much or any of the book. It's unclear. But after that total sort of media feeding frenzy, he was like, I'm not doing it anymore. But he said he didn't want to publish anymore while he was alive because he knew that the German church, not all of the bishops, but the cadre of German bishops who are schismatic, who are against church teaching, would breathe, and he used the word murderous, with murderous furor at him. And he knew this, that he was so aware that he wants this book of essays to be published after his death, because he knew what the reaction would be. And I think for me, like at this point, no one should be like, oh, it's a bombshell that there were gay clubs and seminaries. We all know this. Like if you lived through the scandals 2001 and again the McCarrick in 2018, I mean, we're talking years now of knowing those were the pink palaces, right? That's what we call them, or the lavender mafia in the seminaries. And I have friends who were in the seminaries who suffered this and were put out of the seminaries because of their orthodoxy, because they did not want gay relationships. And so this is a real thing. It's not a surprise. The bombshell, like you said, Tom, I think, is that this is the Pope, the emeritus Pope saying, yes, these things were happening. This is the crux of the issue in the church. This is the crisis of fatherhood. This is the crisis of the priesthood, is this total the scandal of having this stuff in the seminaries at their formation. So that's the bombshell here, and the silence of the
Yeah,
media
my
on
friend
it.
said, why didn't they publish this in English first? And I thought to myself, if you were
Mm,
working,
they never
well,
do.
the book was probably worked on in Italian between Benedict and the people that were probably, he's like maybe the
The
secretary
secretary,
consulting
yeah.
with it. And if you've got this book,
Mhm.
you're like, let me wait to make sure I get it translated in English before I get it out there. Yeah, no, dude, publish it. Click, submit, get it out there before something happens. That
Yeah.
there's going to be, I mean, there are vipers in the Vatican that would try to do anything they could to stop this kind of thing from getting out.